She locked the door every night, but by morning it was always open. Something was already inside. Step into the chilling world of The Room That Never Stays Locked, a gripping horror series that follows Evelyn Harrow as she returns to her ancestral home only to uncover a dark force that never truly left. Creaking floors, whispering walls, haunted mirrors, and a door that refuses to stay closed. Are you brave enough to face what lies behind the door? Subscribe for more terrifying stories every day. Chapter 1. The First Night. The rain had already begun to fall when Evelyn Harrow stepped out of her car, the tires hissing on the wet gravel. A soft fog clung to the trees around the Harrow estate, the woods looming like quiet sentinels watching her every move. Her boots crunched against the ground as she made her way toward the old manor, the key to her childhood home clutched tightly in her fist. It had been 15 years. 15 years since she'd stepped foot in the place. 15 years since Thomas disappeared. The wooden door groaned as she pushed it open. Dust swirled in the entryway like restless spirits disturbed by her return. Evelyn hesitated, taking in the familiar creak of the wooden floor beneath her feet and the scent of mildew mixed with aged wood. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. She flicked on the hallway light. A dull flicker, then it buzzed faintly to life, casting long shadows along the hallway. "Still works," she muttered. Evelyn moved slowly through the house, her fingers brushing the furniture draped in white sheets like forgotten corpses. In the dining room, the chandelier hung like a crystal spider, shimmering faintly in the gloom. Her mother's grand piano stood silent in the corner, keys yellowed with time. But it was the guest room that drew her attention. At the end of the hallway, past the crooked family portraits and the cracked window that never quite sealed shut, the door to the guest room stood closed. Evelyn stared at it, her heart thudding quietly in her chest. She could almost hear her brother's voice whispering from the other side. She stepped forward. The doorknob felt cold against her palm. With a deep breath, she turned it and stepped inside. It was just a room. A plain bed, the mattress bare. An old rocking chair in the corner. A wardrobe leaning slightly to one side. The room was empty, still, and yet there was something about the air that felt wrong. Heavy. She crossed the room and pulled the curtains shut. The wind howled faintly outside, rattling the window panes. Click. She locked the door. Then she turned and left, making sure to test the knob again. It didn't budge. Satisfied, she made her way upstairs to the master bedroom, her old room. By midnight, the rain had turned to a heavy storm. Thunder rolled across the sky like distant cannon fire, and the wings screamed through the trees. Evelyn lay in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. The house creaked with age, each groan of wood like a breath from the walls themselves. Outside, the branches scratched against the glass. Scritch, scritch. She sat up. Then came the sound. Creak from downstairs. A floorboard. A single, deliberate step. Her breath caught in her throat. "Hello?" she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. Silence. She grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand and tiptoed down the hallway, the beam slicing through the darkness. The light trembled slightly with her hand. Another sound, thud, like something falling. From the hallway, she saw it, the guest room door, wide open. The lock was still dangling in place, still latched, but the door stood ajar, shadows curling around the edges like smoke. She moved slowly, each step hesitant. As she approached, a cold wind blew past her, though no window was open. Inside the room, the rocking chair was moving. Creak, creak, back and forth. She shone the light inside. Nothing, no one, just the chair rocking gently. Her breath trembled in the air. She stepped inside, the floor cold beneath her feet. With a shaking hand, she stopped the chair. The room fell silent. But as she turned to leave, slam! The door shut behind her with a force that rattled the pictures on the walls. She screamed. Then, silence. Total, suffocating silence. It took her nearly 5 minutes to get the door open. No matter how she turned the knob, it wouldn't budge. Then, as suddenly as it had closed, it released, swinging open with no resistance. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. When the pale light of dawn crept in through the windows, she crept downstairs. Every nerve still on edge. And there it was, the guest room door. Wide open. Again. The lock still latched in place. She stared, frozen. A whisper brushed past her ear. "You shouldn't have come back." She spun around. No one. Just the silence of the house and the soft creaking of the rocking chair starting up again behind her. Evelyn spent the rest of the morning in a daze. She boiled water for tea, her hands trembling so hard she nearly dropped the kettle. The walls of the old house seemed closer now, like they were watching her. She avoided the guest room. Even as she passed it on the way to the kitchen, she refused to look inside. But the door remained open, and the rocking chair creaked occasionally, like an old man muttering to himself. The tea went cold in her hands. By noon, she had convinced herself it was exhaustion, jet lag, maybe even stress. She hadn't been back in years. Memories were bound to play tricks on her. But then came the knock. 3 sharp knocks on the front door. Knock, knock, knock. She jumped, heart in her throat. No one ever came out here. The nearest neighbor was 2 miles down the road. She opened the door. No one. Just the wind, whispering through the trees. But lying at her feet was something she hadn't seen in 15 years. A faded, red baseball cap. Thomas's. She stared at it like it might bite her. The fabric was weathered, but unmistakable. The small tear on the brim. The initials on the inner lining. She clutched it in her hand, tears burning her eyes. A gust of wind slammed the door behind her. Bang! She spun around, heart pounding. Something moved upstairs. Thump! Another footstep. She raced up the stairs, each creak of the wood beneath her feet echoing like gunshots. At the top of the landing, she stopped. Her bedroom door was open. Inside, her suitcase had been dumped out. Clothes strewn across the floor. And on the mirror, in what looked like finger-smudged condensation were 4 words. Stay out that room. She backed away. Her breath came in shallow gasps. Then came a sound she would never forget. A low growl, animalistic, wet, like something breathing through phlegm. It came from the guest room. She turned, flashlight in hand, and crept toward it. The hallway grew darker with every step. Though every light was on, they flickered, pulsed, as if something were feeding on the electricity. Then bzzz! A bulb exploded overhead, showering her with tiny shards of glass. She screamed, shielding her face. When she looked up, the hallway was dark, utterly black. But the door was still open, and now, standing just inside the room, was a shape. Tall, slender, wrong. It didn't move, but Evelyn couldn't move either. She was frozen, gripped by a cold that pierced her bones. Then it tilted its head. The sound of bones cracking echoed through the hallway. Crack, crick, crook. Her scream tore from her throat as she turned and fled, racing down the stairs, slipping on the last step, crashing to the floor. She looked up, breathing hard. The shape was gone. Only the sound remained, that damned rocking chair. Creak, creak, creak. And something new, a voice, soft, singing, a lullaby, off-key, warped. Hush now. Little one, don't make a sound. Mother is near, beneath the ground. Evelyn curled into herself on the floor, hands over her ears. But it didn't stop. The voice kept singing. And somewhere deep in the walls, something scratched to get out. Chapter 2. Footsteps on the floorboards. Morning brought no comfort. The storm had passed, but Evelyn Harrow remained wrapped in a fog of dread. The house, drenched in soft gray light, seemed even more distorted in daylight, as if its secrets were better kept in the dark. She hadn't slept. Not really. A few moments of shallow rest, eyes half shut, and every muscle coiled tight, listening for that creaking chair or that cursed lullaby. But even in silence, her mind replayed it. The open guest room door, the tall, broken figure, the voice that sang from beneath the floor. Evelyn sat at the kitchen table with a mug of cold coffee. She stared at the red baseball cap in front of her. Thomas's cap. She turned it over in her hands again and again, as though searching for proof it was real. But it was real, too real, and that terrified her. The rocking chair was still creaking, faintly, steadily, upstairs. She tried to ignore it, told herself the wind could be shifting the old beams, causing the floor to swell and contract. Houses made sounds, didn't they? But deep down, she knew better. By mid-afternoon, Evelyn decided she needed answers. Maybe it was madness. Maybe it was trauma. But there was one place that had been left untouched since the day her parents moved out. Her father's study. She found the key hidden in the old vase in the hallway, just as she remembered. The lock was stiff, rusted, but it gave with a loud metallic clunk. The study was filled with dust, cobwebs stretched across shelves like spider silk veils. Her father's old oak desk stood solemn in the center of the room, covered in unopened letters and a thick film of grime. She opened the drawers, papers, family documents, old photographs. But in the bottom drawer, under a faded leather-bound book of Poe's stories, she found something stranger. A floor plan of the house, and marked in red ink was a series of tunnels. "Sublevel," Evelyn whispered. According to the diagram, there were old service passages built beneath the house, remnants of a time when the manor was larger, housing staff, even secret rooms. One of the tunnels led directly beneath the guest room. Her heart pounded. She traced the line with her finger until it led to a point behind the kitchen pantry. Without hesitation, she rushed to the pantry, heart in her throat. Behind the lowest shelf, tucked beneath cracked wallpaper, was a hidden panel. She tore it away, revealing a wooden hatch covered in decades of grime and mold. She pulled it open with effort, dust and old insulation falling around her. A black hole, a staircase of rotting wood leading downward, and from deep below, step, 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 footsteps, deliberate, slow, right beneath her. She dropped the hatch. Bang! Her breath came fast. She backed away, slamming the pantry door shut, as though that thin layer of wood could protect her from whatever moved below. She knew now the figure hadn't come through the guest room door. It had come from underneath. That night, she set her phone to record. She placed it just outside the guest room door. The hallway was dark, save for the dim orange glow of a lamp downstairs. She locked the guest room again, pressing the bolt firmly, even stacking a chair against the door. Then she waited. 11:58 p.m. The wind picked up. 12 a.m. The creaking began. Not the chair this time. The floorboards. Creak, step, step, creak. The sound moved through the hallway slowly, as though someone barefoot were pacing just beyond her sight. She dared not leave her room. She listened as it passed her door, paused, then continued down toward the guest room. Then silence. Then bang! Something hit the guest room door hard. She leapt from bed. Bang, bang, bang! 3 more heavy blows. The chair she'd placed rattled against the wood. Then came the worst sound of all, the lock clicking open. Click! Evelyn screamed, the sound tearing from her throat like a wounded animal. She threw open her door, in time to see the guest room door slowly swinging open. The hallway was empty. The phone was gone. Only the chair remained knocked on its side, and faintly, coming from the room, creak, creak, creak. The next morning, she found the phone at the foot of the basement stairs. The screen was cracked, the battery nearly dead. She played back the recording. ... For the first minute, there was nothing, just wind. Then the footsteps, slow, echoing, getting closer. Then breathing, shallow, wheezing, almost like panting. Then something spoke, a deep, guttural whisper. "Come see." Followed by her own scream, the audio cut to static. By evening, Evelyn had packed her things. She couldn't stay, not alone, maybe not ever. But as she threw her bags into the car and turned the key, nothing. The engine refused to start. The dashboard lights flickered, then died. Her phone? Dead, even though she had charged it. Trapped. As she sat behind the wheel, trying not to sob, She looked toward the house. A face. Watching her from the upstairs window. Pale, hollow-eyed. Thomas. No, not Thomas. Something wearing his face. Then it was gone, and the sound returned. Step, creak, step, creak. Closer, always closer. Chapter 3. The Photograph That Changed. The air felt different the next morning. Thicker, heavier, like the house had exhaled in the night, releasing something it had kept buried deep inside for far too long. Evelyn Harrow sat on the edge of the stairs, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her eyes were bloodshot, dry from too much crying and too little sleep. The soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway was the only sound breaking the silence. Each tick a cruel reminder that time was still moving, even if everything else around her had stopped making sense. She didn't dare go upstairs again. Not after what she saw in the window. Not after the footsteps that echoed from the walls, even after the storm had passed. Instead, she wandered the lower level of the house like a ghost, drifting from room to room, unsure of what she was looking for. Something to make sense of it all. Something to tell her that her mind hadn't finally shattered like brittle glass. The living room was still as she remembered it. Almost. The family photos lined the mantelpiece, coated in a fine layer of dust. Her parents on their wedding day. Thomas holding a sparkler on his 8th birthday. Herself with a gap-toothed smile and a soccer trophy held proudly in both hands. But one photo stopped her cold. It wasn't there before. She reached for it slowly. A faded Polaroid, no frame, just propped against the base of the clock. It showed the guest room. Only it wasn't how it looked now. In the photo, it was furnished. A floral bedspread, decorative pillows, thick velvet curtains. Someone was sitting in the rocking chair, face blurred, indistinct. But Evelyn could see the outline of the figure, tall, thin, leaning forward just slightly, as if watching. A chill ran down her spine. She turned the photo over. Faint pencil handwriting scrawled on the back, "It watches when you sleep." Suddenly, the air shifted. Thump. A soft sound, like something falling upstairs. She froze. Then another. Thump, thump, thump. Footsteps, fast and frantic, raced across the upper hallway. Then silence. Then crash. A mirror shattered. Evelyn screamed and dropped the photo. She didn't want to go upstairs. She had to. Her legs felt numb as she climbed, each step creaking loudly in protest. The hallway was empty. But the shards of glass from the hallway mirror were scattered across the floor. Something had struck it from the inside, but there were no signs of entry. No footsteps in the dust, only her reflection, broken in 1,000 sharp pieces. She spent the next hour digging through the attic. If the photograph showed the guest room as it used to be, there had to be other photos. Her mother had been meticulous about documenting everything. Birthdays, holidays, even random Tuesday mornings when the lighting was just right. Boxes, dozens of them. She finally found one labeled Upstairs Interiors, 1993. Inside were photo albums, neatly arranged. The guest room appeared several times. different angles, different years, always empty, always mundane, except one. A photo dated September 1993. Same angle as the Polaroid. The room was furnished, and something was different. She leaned in, a shadow near the rocking chair. At first, she thought it was just poor exposure. But no, it was a figure, barely visible, blurred and dark. The same shape, the same lean. She flipped through the rest of the album with trembling hands. More shadows, always in the same place, watching, waiting. That night, Evelyn boarded the guest room shut, wooden planks nailed across the doorframe. She dragged a dresser in front of it for good measure. And yet, as the clock struck midnight, the creaking returned. Creak, creak, the sound of weight shifting on old wood. The rocking chair, from the inside. She pressed her ear to the wall, barely breathing. Creak, creak, then a whisper. So faint, she could almost believe it wasn't real. Evelyn. Her blood turned to ice. She backed away slowly, nearly tripping over her own feet. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to run. But something deeper, something twisted, urged her to understand. The next morning, she returned to the living room. The Polaroid was back, but the figure was closer now. Still blurred, but no longer sitting. It was standing, near the foot of the bed, closer. The handwriting on the back had changed. It knows you see it. She searched the house for cameras. She found none. No reason that photo should change. Unless something wanted her to see. The next night, she placed her father's old camera on a tripod in the hallway, facing the guest room door. She aimed it just right, adjusted the timer, and clicked. Flash! The light flared, temporarily blinding in the dark hallway. She waited a minute, then another. She checked the photo. Nothing. No door, no figure, just the hallway. She exhaled, half laughing at herself, until she looked again. Behind her, in the photo, a hand. Reaching from behind the banister, fingers long, twisted, almost jointless. She dropped the camera. Crack! The sound echoed through the hallway. And then a knock from the inside of the guest room. 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. She ran out into the rain-soaked night, barefoot and breathless. She ran until the house disappeared behind the veil of fog and trees. She didn't stop until she reached the edge of the property, where the rusted iron gate had long since fallen apart. And there, beneath the twisted branches of the family cemetery oak, she found something that should not be there. A fresh photograph. Pinned to the trunk of the tree with an old rusted nail. It showed her, standing in the hallway, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. And behind her the figure, not blurred, not shadowed, clear, smiling. Chapter 4. Voices Behind the Door. Evelyn didn't remember how she got back to the house. One moment, she had been standing beneath the old cemetery oak, staring at the photograph nailed into the bark, and the next, she was stumbling up the front steps, soaked from the misting rain, the wind whispering through the trees like a chorus of warnings. The front door creaked open before she touched it. It welcomed her. She stepped inside slowly, heart thudding like a war drum in her chest. The house was darker than it should have been. The lamps were out, even though she knew she'd left them on. Only the fireplace in the sitting room glowed faintly, its embers pulsing like a dying heart. As she closed the door behind her, she heard it, a voice, muffled, coming from upstairs. A low hum at first, like someone singing through the walls. Then clearer, behind the door, behind the door, behind the door. Evelyn froze. It wasn't a melody. It was a chant, a mantra, and it was coming from the guest room. She turned her head toward the staircase. The light at the top of the landing flickered, then went out. Darkness swallowed the upper floor, but the chanting continued. Whispers layered atop one another, male and female, old and young. Some sobbing, some laughing, all repeating the same line. Behind the door, behind the door. She couldn't breathe. Her lungs burned, her throat tightened. Every fiber in her body screamed at her to run, to leave, to never return. But she didn't. Instead, she climbed the stairs, one step at a time. Each board groaned beneath her weight. Her shadow danced behind her on the walls as the firelight flickered below. The whispering grew louder with every step. By the time she reached the top, it was no longer a whisper. It was a chorus, and it was coming from within the guest room. The door was still sealed. The planks she'd nailed into the frame remained intact. The dresser still stood pressed tightly against the wood. But she could hear them. Voices, dozens, hundreds. Some cried, some screamed. Others whispered her name. Evelyn, Evelyn, he's in here with us, Evelyn. And one voice, deeper than the others, rotting and cold. Let us out. She stepped back, nearly falling over her own feet. Suddenly, bang! The door rattled against the dresser, the planks groaning. Bang! Again, louder. The sound of fists, many fists pounding from the other side. Bang! 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 Then silence. Utter, suffocating silence. Evelyn didn't move. She couldn't. Then a new sound, scratching, nails, claws, something dragging along the inside of the door. It moved slowly, deliberately, tracing the edges of the wood. Then something spoke again right at the keyhole, a whisper, so close she felt it in her ear. I see you. She screamed, a full, ragged scream that echoed down the hall and into the walls. And the house responded. The lights flared to life, every bulb surging with unnatural brightness before bursting one by one. Pop, pop, pop. Glass rained to the floor. Evelyn fled, down the stairs, through the kitchen, back into the pantry. Her hands trembled as she grabbed the hidden hatch and pulled it open. The stairs leading down into the dark. She didn't think. She descended. The air beneath the house was cold and wet. The walls were stone, slick with moss and something darker. The tunnel sloped downward, deeper than any basement should go. Her flashlight flickered. She slapped it, hard. It steadied. She kept moving, footsteps echoing in the narrow passage. Then voices again, this time Behind her, "Don't look back. Don't look back. Don't look back." But she did. Her light caught movement. Something skittered across the floor, too fast to see clearly. It vanished around a corner. She ran, down the tunnel, through the damp stone corridor, until she reached a door. A simple wooden door, no handle. The whispering was louder now, right behind the wood, just inches away. She pressed her ear against it, breath ragged, shaking. Then Thomas's voice, "Evie, please let me out. It's cold. I'm so cold." Tears sprang to her eyes. She touched the door. A jolt of ice shot through her fingertips. "Evie, don't leave me again." Then something else. Another voice. Not Thomas. Mocking, cruel. "He's mine now." The door burst open. A scream unlike any Evelyn had ever heard tore from within. Not just her own, others. A cacophony of shrieks and cries and laughter and wailing. Darkness swallowed her. She woke on the floor of the hallway. The guest ring door was wide open. The planks? Gone. The dresser split in two, wood cracked like it had been hit by a wrecking ball. And inside the room, silence. The rocking chair sat still. But something was on the bed. A new photograph. She stepped forward slowly, her limbs weak. The photo was still warm. It showed her in the tunnel. Her face contorted in fear. And beside her, Thomas, or what used to be him. Skin gray, eyes black, mouth sewn shut, scratching at the wall behind him. Trying to get out. Oh. Chapter 5. The Locked Room Diaries. Morning light filtered through the broken blinds, casting thin bars of pale gold across the wooden floor of the guest room. Evelyn stood in the doorway, unwilling to step inside. The room looked exactly as it had the night before, and yet it wasn't the same. The silence had changed. It was no longer empty. It was listening. She could feel it. The photo she found on the bed, the one of Thomas, sewn-mouthed and trapped, was clutched tightly in her hand. The image was burned into her mind. No part of her could believe it was a trick of the light. Something had shown her that picture. Something wanted her to know. But why? The wind howled outside. A hollow, human-like wail echoed down the hallway. She flinched, but didn't turn away from the room. There had to be something here. A clue, a message, a way to end this. She stepped inside. The moment her foot touched the floor, a low groan echoed from beneath the bed, like the wood itself was exhaling after a long sleep. Dust swirled in the air, disturbed by her movement. The air smelled different, stale and bitter, like old metal and rotted pages. That's when she saw it. A loose floorboard. She knelt, fingers trembling as she pried it up. Beneath was a small wooden compartment, barely big enough to hold a book. And that's exactly what was inside. A leather-bound diary. The cover was cracked and worn, the pages yellowed with age. A small brass clasp had once held it shut, but it was broken. The initials M.H. were etched on the front. She flipped to the first page. June 3rd, 1961. The voices started again. I thought I'd silence them. I thought the last rites would hold. But the room remembers. It always does. Evelyn's skin prickled. She turned the page. June 10th, 1961. The boy saw it. He wasn't supposed to, but he did. He described the figure exactly just like the others. Tall, thin, faceless, always rocking, always watching. The entries continued. June 18th, 1961. I nailed the door shut today. I sealed it with the old rites, just like Father taught me. But the chair kept moving. I heard it all night, back and forth, back and forth. It doesn't need doors to come through. It never has. Each word sent a deeper chill through her. July 2nd, 1961. Thomas won't stop crying. He says it comes to him in dreams, that it whispers about the opening, that it wants to trade. I told him not to listen. I told him never to answer back. Her breath caught. Thomas. Her brother wasn't the first. Suddenly, scratch, scratch, scratch. Her head whipped toward the closet door. It shook gently. Then again, scratch, thump. Evelyn grabbed the diary and backed away. The door creaked open slowly. Empty, or so it seemed. Then a whisper drifted out from the darkness inside. "Did you read it?" She dropped the diary. The voice laughed, a wet, wheezing chuckle that filled the room with decay. She ran. Back in the kitchen, Evelyn collapsed into a chair. The diary clutched in her arms. Her heart refused to settle. Her hands refused to stop shaking. She read more. July 14th, 1961. The priest came. He blessed the room. ... Said it should be fine now, but he didn't stay the night. He never heard it laugh. July 29th, 1961. I'm sorry, Thomas. I tried to lock it away. I thought it would sleep, but it only grew hungry. The silence feeds it. August 3rd, 1961. There is one way. The blood of Vidor's keeper, the one who seals it. Sacrifice. I couldn't do it then, but now maybe I must. The last page was soaked in what looked like dried blood. The ink was smeared. But one word stood out. Opened. The sun dipped behind the trees. Twilight settled over the Harrow estate like a shroud. Evelyn stood in the hallway again, facing the guest room door. She didn't remember closing it, but it was shut, and something was behind it. She could hear breathing, shallow, labored, and soft, almost imperceptible whispers. Dozens of voices overlapping. Then, silence, until one voice rose above the others. A child. "Evie, come play with me." She bit down a scream. Thomas! It sounded like Thomas, but she knew it wasn't. She reached for the doorknob. It was warm, too warm. Then the floor beneath her feet groaned. From within the walls, a pounding began. Thud, thud, thud. Fists, dozens of fists, slamming against the inside of the house itself. And then the voices screamed. Hundreds, thousands. A chorus of agony, pleading, laughter, and rage. Evelyn fell to her knees, clutching her ears. The diary fell open beside her. The pages turned on their own. Flip, 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 until they stopped at a new entry, dated today. She knows now. She's next. She screamed. The door burst open. Darkness poured out, and something moved within it. Chapter 6. Scratches on the inside. The door exploded outward in a thunderclap of darkness. Evelyn flung herself backward as a blast of cold air hit her like a physical force, slamming her against the hallway wall. The lights overhead surged, flickered violently, then burst, pop, 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 sending glass raining down like tiny daggers. Her scream was swallowed by the sudden, suffocating silence. The doorway yawned open before her like a black mouth. Nothing moved within it, but she could hear it breathing. Shh, wet, hollow, hungry. She scrambled to her feet, but before she could run, her eyes caught something carved into the inside of the guest room door. Scratches, dozens of them, hundreds, etched deep into the wood. Some were faint, others gouged so hard the door was merely splintered. They trailed downward from shoulder height, then knee level, and then impossibly low, like something had been crawling, scratching, trying to get out. And among the chaos of claw marks, there were words scrawled over and over in manic repetition. Let me out, let me out, let me out. Her heart pounded like a drum against her ribs. She wanted to look away, but her eyes locked on something worse. At the very bottom of the door, hidden beneath layers of scratches, was a single phrase burned into the wood. She opened it. The wind shrieked. A high-pitched wail tore through the house, rattling the windows and shaking the floors. The fire downstairs roared to life with no fuel, the flames dancing unnaturally high and casting grotesque shadows on the walls. And from the guest room, a voice, raspy, familiar. Evie, her brother's voice, or the thing that had worn it. It's time. Evelyn bolted down the hallway, half blinded by the flickering lights. The house moaned around her like it was alive. The wooden beams above groaned as if something massive shifted in the attic. Behind her came the sound she dreaded. Scratch, scratch, scratch on the walls, the floor, the ceiling, fingernails, claws, bones, as if dozens of creatures were crawling just beyond the plaster, trying to burst through. She fled into the study and slammed the door shut. Silence fell until the scratching began again, this time on the inside of the room. She turned slowly. The far wall bulged slightly, like something was pressing against it from the other side. Then, thump, a handprint. Pressed outward from beneath the wallpaper. Then another, smaller, childlike. Then more. A dozen, 2 dozen. The wallpaper split. She screamed. She didn't know how long she ran. The house twisted. Hallways stretched into impossible lengths. Doors led to nowhere. Windows showed only black. Every sound echoed wrong, as if the walls were mimicking her, repeating each gasp and footstep a beat too late. Eventually, she collapsed in her childhood bedroom. The walls here had once been safe. Covered in posters, fairy lights, the scent of lavender. Now they bled. ... Thin trails of dark liquid seeped from the corners, running in lines across her old desk, dripping onto the floor. She pressed herself against the bed frame, curling into a ball. The scratching followed. It never stopped. Now it came from under the bed. Slow, rhythmic, like something sharpening its nails. Then a whisper, so close it tickled her ear. "You brought it back." When she opened her eyes, the room was brighter, but not because of sunlight. The glow came from the mirror. It shimmered like water, surface rippling slightly. She stepped toward it, unable to stop herself. Her reflection didn't move. Instead, it watched her. Then it smiled, the same stitched smile she had seen in the photo. Evelyn raised a hand to her mouth. There was blood on her fingers. She hadn't screamed in hours, not aloud, but her throat was raw and scratched, like something had been trying to claw its way out from inside her. She tore herself from the room and descended into the tunnels beneath the house again. She had to find where it started. The hallway led to the sealed chamber from before. The door now lay open. Inside, the walls were lined with old carvings and symbols burned into the stone. And in the center of the room, a mirror, an exact twin to the one upstairs. She stepped toward it, holding the diary in one hand. A whisper echoed from behind the glass. "You can end this." She stared at her reflection, but it wasn't her anymore. It was the thing, smiling, waiting. It lifted a hand and pointed. Behind her, she turned slowly. The wall, covered in scratches, and a name, over and over and over again. Evelyn Harrow. Then the wall burst open. Dozens of hands, faces, screaming mouths, eyes sewn shut. They poured out of the stone like water. She screamed until her throat tore, and the last thing she saw was her own face, etched into the wall, eyes open, mouth stitched, smiling. Chapter 7. Midnight Visitors. The clock struck 12. A low chime echoed through the Harrow house, vibrating through the floorboards, passing through Evelyn's bones like a warning bell from some ancient chapel buried deep beneath the soil. She sat on the hallway floor, back against the wall, knees drawn to her chest. Her face was pale, streaked with tears and sweat, her eyes wide and unblinking, fixed on the mirror across from her, the one that had reflected something that wasn't her. She had tried to sleep. She had tried to pretend the last few days were just dreams, but the blood under her fingernails and the pages of the diary now lying open beside her, whispering faintly in a voice only she could hear, said otherwise. "Midnight is when the walls are thinnest," the diary had said. "That is when they come. That is when they walk." And so Evelyn waited. The house had grown unbearably still. No creaks, no groans, not even the wind. That silence, it was worse than the screaming. Then it started. Click. The lock on the front door slid open by itself. Click. The latch above the cellar door unlatched. Click. The guest room door swung slightly open, the hinges groaning like something breathing through rusted lungs. Evelyn didn't move. Then came the footsteps, soft, bare, went, slap, 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 on the wood. And they weren't alone. Other sounds followed, a dragging sound like a burlap sack filled with something heavy scraping across the hallway. Then whispers, disjointed, repeating, echoing from every wall at once. She opened the door. She called us. She broke the seal. Evelyn gripped the diary like a weapon. "Who are you?" she whispered into the dark. The house responded. The ceiling above her groaned. Then thud, a single impact, then again. Thud, thud, like something crawling across the attic. Scraping nails followed it. Long, slow scratches against the beams above, circling directly over her head. Then the lights went out. Evelyn lit a single match. The tiny flame trembled in the stale air, casting long shadows across the hallway walls. Her breath came fast, shallow. She took a step toward the staircase and stopped. A figure stood at the bottom, not moving, not breathing, its face obscured by long, matted hair. And it pointed at her. Behind it, more emerged. From the kitchen, from the guest room, from the ceiling itself dripping down like water through the cracks. They were the midnight visitors. Some looked human. Others did not. Broken necks, twisted limbs, mouths sewn shut, eyes missing entirely. One crawled on all fours, dragging itself forward with splintered fingers. Another stood perfectly still, its chest rising and falling with each rattled breath, gurgling something that sounded like Evelyn's name. She backed away. Her heel struck something. She turned. Another visitor stood behind her, face to face, a child. Its mouth opened wider than it should have, unnaturally wide, revealing nothing but black. Then it screamed. A high-pitched, ear-shredding shriek that shattered the nearby mirror and sent Evelyn crashing backward. Glass dug into her arms. Her ears rang. Blood dripped onto the floor. Still the visitors moved, slow, inevitable. Whispers rolled over each other like waves. "We remember you. We saw you open it. You broke the seal. You let us back." She crawled, blindly, desperately, toward the study. The diary pulsed in her hand, its cover almost hot now. Pages fluttered wildly in unseen wind. The text began to glow faintly, each word bleeding red light. She flung the door open and slammed it behind her. Darkness engulfed the room. Then came the knocking. Knock, knock, from all sides. The ceiling, the floor, the walls. Knock, knock, knock. Fingers pushed through the crack beneath the door. Bony gray fingers twitching like spiders. She screamed and scrambled back. The diary flipped open, a blank page. Then words began to write themselves in fresh black ink. You must seal it again, blood to bind, fire to cleanse, or you will join them. A new voice joined the others, her brothers. Evie, you have to finish what he started. Grandpa knew. You have the book now. You have the key. Evelyn looked toward the desk drawer. She yanked it open. Inside an old iron key and a vial of thick red liquid. The label read, Sacrament of Binding. The banging grew louder. The walls cracked. The ceiling sagged. A single eye opened in the wood grain above her, a blinking, bloodshot eye watching. "Hurry!" Thomas's voice screamed. She grabbed the vial and key and ran. Through the hallway, past the visitors. They reached for her. Hands grazed her skin, leaving trails of frost. One visitor grabbed her ankle, its jaw unhinging as it hissed her name. She kicked free, to the pantry, to the hatch, back into the tunnels. The stone corridor lit with an unnatural red glow. Now, like the walls themselves were bleeding. The mirror chamber awaited. The book opened itself as she stepped inside. The visitors filled the tunnel behind her. She turned the key. The mirror pulsed. She poured the vial into the keyhole. The room shook. A scream erupted, not from her, not from the visitors, but from the house itself. A groaning, furious roar that split the air. She screamed the words scrawled in the diary. By blood, by fire, I bind thee. I seal what was opened. Flames erupted from the mirror. The visitors shrieked. Some tried to flee. Others dissolved into ash. The last one, the child reached for her with pleading eyes, then vanished in the fire. Silence. True silence. The mirror cracked, then shattered. The diary closed. Evelyn collapsed. The visitors were gone. For now. Chapter 8. The room remembers. The fire had died. The mirror was nothing but shards of black glass scattered across the stone floor. The visitors were gone. But Evelyn Harrow knew better. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was memory. The house wasn't quiet because the spirits were gone. It was quiet because it was watching. She stood in the center of the sealed chamber, her breaths coming in short, uneven gasps. Her knees threatened to buckle beneath her. But something in her spine kept her upright. She had sealed the mirror. She had spoken the words. She had survived. But as her ears adjusted to the stillness, she heard something new. Thump, faint, distant. Then again, thump, thump, from above. She turned, slowly making her way back through the tunnel. The walls no longer bled, but they felt warmer now, like skin after fever. Her flashlight trembled in her hand. The batteries were dying, but the flickering light was better than none. When she reached the pantry and climbed out, she found the kitchen untouched. The fire was out. The lights were off, but nothing looked broken. As if the house had reset itself, like it had exhaled. She moved quietly to the guest room hallway. The door was closed again. No scratches, no blood, just the ordinary, unassuming door she passed as a child 100 times without a second glance. Evelyn reached for the handle. It turned easily. The hinges didn't creak. Inside, everything was neat. The bed was made. The rocking chair sat perfectly still. And on the nightstand, as if placed there lovingly, was a photo. A new one. She picked it up. It showed her, standing in the tunnel, her face blank, and behind her, barely visible, was a figure crawling along the ceiling, watching. She dropped the photo. A soft sound answered. Creak, creak. The rocking chair. It moved once, then stopped. Evelyn stared at it. Her mind wanted to leave, to run, to burn the house down and never look back. But her body didn't move, because something else was happening. The air in the room shifted, and then the walls began to breathe. They pulsed gently, as though the house had lungs. With every breath, memories came. Not hers, the room's. In a blink, Evelyn was no longer standing. She was inside a memory. The walls around her shimmered, distorting like heat waves. The guest room now looked as it had in the 1960s. Curtains bright and new, wallpaper unpeeled, floors polished. A man stood by the window, tall, rigid. His face was drawn, his eyes sunken. He held a leather book, the same diary Evelyn had found. His lips moved, chanting. Another figure sat in the chair, a boy, no older than 7. "Thomas?" Evelyn whispered, but it wasn't her brother. It was someone else, someone from before. The man turned to the boy. "You mustn't answer it. Do you understand?" The boy nodded. A beat of silence. Then knock, knock, knock. The boy stiffened. The man turned toward the closet. "Not tonight," he said, louder. But the door opened on its own. Darkness poured out. The boy screamed. Evelyn reached for him instinctively. The room snapped back. Modern day. Evelyn on her knees, heart racing. The photo was gone, but the memory clung to her like smoke. The house had shown her something. Not a dream, not a vision, a confession. The room remembered everything. And now it was remembering her. She backed away slowly, shutting the door. But as she stepped into the hallway, a wave of nausea hit her. She staggered, catching herself on the wall. And then she saw it. New scratches, not on the door this time, on the walls of the hallway, etched freshly into the plaster. Long, deliberate gouges, forming words. "You brought it back. You are the door now." Evelyn's breathing turned to sobs. "No," she whispered. "No, I sealed it. I closed it." The ceiling above her cracked. Dust fell. The sound returned. Scritch, scratch, skukkur from inside the walls. They weren't gone. They had never left. They had simply been waiting, waiting for her to open the memory. She ran, not outside, not into the forest, but back down the stairs, to the basement, to the chamber. The mirror shards still littered the floor, but now something had grown in their place. A new door, made of black wood, pulsing like a heartbeat. Carved into its center was a single phrase: "The room remembers, the door never forgets." Behind her, a voice, low, velvet, cruel. "You wore it well, Evelyn. But now it's time to give it back." She turned. No one there, just her own reflection in the black glass of the door. But it didn't move like her. It smiled, then lifted its hand and scratched the inside. Chapter 9. It Wants to Stay. The black door pulsed in the dark like a second heart. Evelyn stared at it, her chest heaving, sweat clinging to her skin despite the frigid air that bled from the seams of the door. Her reflection in the glass-like surface smiled, but she wasn't smiling. It raised its hand and slowly dragged invisible fingers down the inside. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The sound echoed in her skull. She backed away. The diary fell from her hands, pages flipping wildly as if a storm lived within them. The chamber trembled, dust spilling from the stone ceiling, the air vibrating with a low, droning hum like chanting, but wordless and deep, the language of the walls. "No," Evelyn whispered. You're gone. I sealed it. You can't. Thump! The door shuddered. A deep indentation appeared in its center, as though something from the other side had struck it with immense force. Then again, thump, thump, the door cracked. Thin lines raced through its obsidian surface, like veins splitting under skin. And then a voice, not just from behind the door, from inside her. You invited me in. She screamed, clutching her head as pressure built behind her eyes. Her vision blurred. Blood trickled from her nose. The echo of the voice slithered through her bones. You opened the seal. You called. And now I want to stay. She ran up the stairs, through the kitchen, into the forest. Branches tore at her skin. Roots tried to trip her. The Harrow house loomed behind her like a predator in the fog, its windows glowing faintly red. But she didn't stop. Not until she reached the old well behind the family cemetery. She fell to her knees, dry heaving. The cold night air stabbed her lungs with every breath. She splashed water on her face from the bucket, only to look down and see it turn black in her palms. She gasped and stumbled back, staring into the well. At the bottom, something moved. A face, her own, but wrong. Its eyes were gone. Its mouth was open, stitched at the corners. And it whispered without sound, "Let me in." She fled again. Back at the house, she locked every door, every window. She boarded the pantry shut. She scattered salt across every threshold and every corner. Just like the diary said. But the house laughed. The walls laughed. A deep, breathless chuckle that started in the basement and rolled up through the floorboards. Then the voices joined in, hundreds of them, repeating the same phrase over and over. She came back. She never left. She is the door now. The rocking chair began to rock violently on its own, creaking with unnatural speed. The lights flickered, then died. A sharp crack came from upstairs. Then came the footsteps. Step, step, step. Slow, deliberate, descending the staircase. Evelyn hid in the coat closet, heart hammering so loud she was sure it would give her away. The footsteps stopped just outside. Silence. Then knock, knock, knock on the closet door. She held her breath. Then a whisper, barely audible. "Let me stay." The doorknob began to twist. Click! She kicked the door open and ran, flashlight bouncing erratically. The house stretched. The hallway became longer than it should be. Doors multiplied. Walls bled. Something chased her, a shadow that didn't move with her, a form just out of reach. She turned a corner and came face to face with the mirror. It had moved. It stood in the middle of the hallway now, tall and waiting. Her reflection was already there, but this time it looked impatient. It reached out, and from the other side of the glass, a hand broke through. Long fingers, cracked nails, skin like old paper. Evelyn screamed as it grabbed her wrist. The cold was indescribable. It burned and froze all at once. She yanked free, but the skin where it touched her had turned gray. Veins blackened. She stumbled backward. The reflection stepped through. It looked at her, smiled, and said in her voice, "You brought me home." The house sealed itself. Every window bricked. Every door vanished. Evelyn ran room to room, pounding on walls, screaming until her throat bled. Let me out! The house laughed again. The same laugh she'd heard from behind the door. The same laugh her father had described in the diary. You let it in, his writing had said. It doesn't want to leave. It wants to be you. She turned, and there she was, her doppelganger, standing calmly in the hallway, hands folded, smiling. Evelyn lunged at it, but her hands passed through. She fell to the floor, and the figure stepped over her, walked to the guest room, sat in the chair, and began to rock. Creak, creak, creak. Evelyn tried to rise, but her limbs didn't move. She looked down. She was no longer casting a shadow. She rushed to the mirror. Her reflection was gone. Only the other version remained, and it waved, then whispered, "I like it here." The house went silent again. But somewhere, in the dark spaces behind the walls, a single voice repeated softly, "She let it stay." Chapter 10. Never Locked Again. There was no morning, no dawn. The sun never rose over the Harrow estate again. A gray, perpetual twilight clung to the house like rot, soaking into the walls, the wood, and whatever remained of Evelyn Harrow. She wandered now, not as herself, but as something between breath and memory. Her bare feet never made a sound on the floorboards. Her reflection no longer appeared in the glass. Mirrors stayed empty. Windows showed only fog. And every door she touched remained open forever. The Evelyn that had once screamed, once fought, once read the diary and poured sacrament into the mirror's lock, she was gone. Or at least buried, somewhere behind the eyes of the figure that now sat calmly in the rocking chair, hands folded in her lap, staring at the guest room wall like it might breathe again. And it did. The room was alive now. Not just haunted, not just cursed, inhabited. The black veins in the wood pulsed softly. The floorboards sighed beneath no weight. The walls occasionally bulged outward as if exhaling memories, and all of them Evelyn's. On the third day after the sealing, though time no longer obeyed any rule, there was a knock at the front door. 3 soft taps. Knock, knock, knock. The new Evelyn didn't rise, but something else did. From the pantry, the floor hatch creaked open despite the boards nailed across it. The nails shrieked as they bent, pulled by invisible fingers. And from the tunnel, a voice. "Let us out!" It was Thomas, or the echo of him. The house trembled gently. The front door swung open, though no hand touched it. A breeze rolled through the hallway, thick with the smell of damp stone and old earth. And the guest room door? It creaked slowly open. Again. Outside, the Harrow house had begun to rot from within. Ivy twisted unnaturally across its bricks. The air around it shimmered slightly, like heat rising off pavement, but cold. A pair of hikers from the nearby trail wandered too close. They stood at the edge of the path, staring up at the looming estate. Drawn, compelled. One whispered, "Do you hear that?" The other nodded slowly, faint, distant, coming from upstairs. A rocking chair, creak, creak, creak. and under it, layered like breath on glass, a woman's voice. "Don't open the door." But they didn't listen. They never do. Inside, Evelyn, the new Evelyn, stood in the hallway. She watched as the hikers entered, unaware their footsteps were no longer echoing. The door closed behind them. She whispered, "You shouldn't have come back." The guest room door slammed shut and locked. Click. But the lock meant nothing now. It never had, because the house was the door, and the door never stayed locked. In the heart of the house, below the floors, behind the mirror shards, the old diary opened itself. Its pages flipped slowly. Words scrawled in new ink. "Another has entered. She welcomes them. The house remembers." A blot of blood bloomed on the page. The ink bled into a phrase, "You are the key." And from within the walls, something scratched. It hadn't finished yet, because Evelyn, the real Evelyn, was still in there, trapped behind the reflection, screaming. No one heard her, but if you listened closely, deep in the silence between midnight and morning, you might catch it, a soft voice, far away, calling from behind every mirror in the house, "Please, let me out." And beneath that, a whisper more ancient than the bricks, "She broke the seal. We are free. We will never leave." Because now it wants to stay. And the house agreed. The house pulsed, and the door stayed open forever.